As the next Avengers approaches, new scoops drop on the internet every day, and every day, the Doomsday plot seems to thicken to the point of becoming almost overwhelming. Because while the Multiverse saga has long seemed disconnected, vague, and something many people lost interest in, the Russo brothers absolutely want to tie everything together, even if it means squeezing a 5-hour movie into 2.5 hours. And that's exactly why I think something is being kept from us. Yes, every comic book fan knows it. What awaits us in the next 3 years might be the biggest arc in all of pop culture. But today, Phase 6 only has 4 official movies, with just 2 of them focused on Doom, the antagonist who will reboot the MCU. But I have a hunch that's been haunting me for weeks. What Marvel has announced is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think the next Comic-Con I'll attend is going to be historic. And what if I told you that we might actually get 3 Avengers movies in 2 years? Yeah, it's crazy, I know, but I'm telling you, the Russo brothers are here to make up for lost time. So together, we're going to look into all the rumors and production details that prove Marvel hasn't told us everything. Of course, we'll talk about past, present, and future projects. So, we're entering the spoiler zone, the danger zone. You're with Kevin Buchart, your favorite theorist's favorite theorist. And before we get started, let me put your mind at ease right away. Yes, there's something weird with my head. I messed up while shaving and I had 2 choices, this or nothing. Roll the intro. Before we get started, a little disclaimer. While writing this video, I relied on my gut feeling. But since then, an insider who came out of absolutely nowhere showed up with some completely crazy information. So we're going to do this big video in 2 parts. The first with my theory, and then the second based on the information from this insider. Alright, let's go. Hey there. Second disclaimer, this one recorded on Friday since Marvel decided to mess with us. Yes, because on Thursday night, Disney announced that both Avengers movies would be pushed back by 6 months. This delay will probably be followed by a delay for Spider-Man as well. Which basically changes absolutely everything about the dates mentioned in this video. But it doesn't change anything about everything we're going to talk about in terms of content. This means there will be a huge gap between the Fantastic Four and Doomsday, the biggest since COVID. Since the schedule is shifted, it doesn't change much. It actually supports the theory by allowing more time to produce everything discussed in this video. So production isn't a constraint anymore. Alright, that's it. Enjoy your video. The Doomsday shock. If you follow my videos, you know it. The history of this saga has been very disrupted. COVID, strikes, actor troubles, and other political wars at Disney. And the idea of this video isn't to go over the whole situation all over again. But it's still important to understand how we got to the announcement of Doomsday at Comic-Con 2024. As I told you in my last video, the Multiverse saga was always meant to end with Secret Wars. With the acquisition of Fox in 2017 and the recovery of the licenses sold 20 years earlier, Kevin Feige got his babies back and had to find a way to integrate them into the MCU as quickly as possible. I say his babies because the first X-Men trilogy was simply one of Feige's first jobs. And the Fantastic Four, well, that's his favorite Marvel team. He knows it, he has to do it right. And the best plan to explain why they weren't there before is the multiverse. So he's going to start introducing it right at the end of the Infinity Saga. In Endgame, Hulk explains to us that time travel doesn't work like it does in Back to the Future. Traveling to the past doesn't change your present, but creates a new timeline. So, a new future without affecting your own past? Even now it still gives you a headache, I know, but the Ancient One explains it better. Removing a stone from this timeline creates a new branch. A branch that could end up with a much worse fate than the one it was supposed to have. A universe that's going to become apocalyptic. And finally, the Loki from 2012 escapes with the Tesseract, which leads us directly to the TVA. And it officially marks the beginning of the multiverse, especially with the arrival of Jonathan Majors in the role of He Who Remains. It was a real shock at the time, both for the audience, myself included, and for the Marvel teams. The actor steals the show and goes from a secondary character to the new main threat of the saga. Kang then becomes the linchpin of all multiversal storylines. He is the one who is supposed to lead us to Secret Wars. But when you listen to interviews with the Russo brothers, Kevin Feige himself, or RDJ, it was actually always planned for Dr. Doom to be the main antagonist of Secret Wars. Which makes sense. This scenario can't function without him. Kang was meant to be the threat Doom eliminates with the heroes. In order to become God Emperor Doom and create Battleworld. And as proof, the first post-credits scene that was planned for Wakanda Forever was supposed to show us Dr. Doom. It was removed at the last minute. But even more surprising, it said that it was always supposed to be RDJ who played this role in this movie, and that he was the one who made it a condition that the Russos would direct, so it was RDJ who brought in the Russos, not the other way around, and that's very important to understand. Secret Wars was never questioned. In fact, we never hear anything about the script for Secret Wars. Probably because it was approved years ago. Pre-production for the movie began as early as 2018, possibly earlier, influencing the selection of movies and series to ensure everything, including key characters, was ready on time. However, where things got stuck was with the movie that was supposed to lead to Secret Wars, because Secret Wars is about the consequences of the end of the multiverse. It's a full-on adventure in Battleworld, with Doctor Doom as the God Emperor and his vassals. And originally, this movie was supposed to be Kang Dynasty. It was set up through projects like Loki or Quantumania. He was supposed to be used in several other projects like the Fantastic Four or the Thunderbolts. But here's the thing, Quantumania was a complete failure. Jonathan Majors has been convicted of domestic violence and is now completely cancelled, so they need a plan B. When Bob Iger returns, he gives full authority back to Kevin Feige. And according to RDJ on the Howard Chatter podcast, it was during a casual conversation that Feige supposedly said to him, "Tell me, don't you feel like coming back?" "No, I don't." But that's great. He then introduced him to the creative team that had been working on Secret Wars for years, before going to see Bob Iger at his cabin to propose a new Avengers movie, Doomsday, and that's when the magic happened. Very quickly, the Russos are called, but they only agree to come back if they find a good idea, and it's only a few weeks or even a few days before the Comic-Con announcement that everything falls into place. Avengers Doomsday is launched, and apparently it couldn't be made without RDJ as Doom. So this film has the heavy responsibility of suddenly replacing Kang, who was meant to be the main threat of this saga. It has to introduce a new antagonist, set up the entire upcoming threat, lead to the death of the multiverse, and the creation of Battleworld. That's quite a lot, and if in one of my recent videos I listed everything that was set up for Doomsday, you'll quickly realize that in reality, it's almost impossible to fit all of that into a single movie. Avengers Doomsday, The Longest Day. Phase 6 is currently made up of 4 movies. The Fantastic Four is scheduled for July 2025, Avengers Doomsday in May 2026. Spider-Man Brand New Day in July 2026 and Avengers Secret Wars in May 2027. But according to production schedules, 3 other dates could be added to complete this phase. One in November 2026 between Spider-Man and Secret Wars, and 2 in 2027, one for the summer, and one at the end of the year after Secret Wars. And if you're wondering, yes, the February slot has indeed been removed from the Marvel calendar. I also remind you that Marvel announced they want to limit themselves to 2 or 3 movies per year. Which fits perfectly, since there are 3 movies for 2025, 2 for 2026 for now, and 3 for 2027. As for series, it's completely unclear. Marvel said they'll only release 1 or 2 live-action series each year. However, 2025 is an exception as they're still finishing projects from the previous management. But for 2026, we already have Daredevil, Born Again Season 2, and Vision. After that, nothing is clear. But anyway, let's put the schedules aside for now. Remember, only 4 movies have been officially announced to end the Multiverse saga. And according to the most persistent rumors, an X-Men movie should arrive right after Secret Wars to launch the soft reboot. Which means that Kevin Feige will wrap things up quickly so he can open the new chapter as early as 2027 and launch the Mutant Saga. But with everything that's been set up, it's clearly not going to be that simple, because if we line up all the information we have about Doomsday, just with that, the movie could last 5 hours. So let's start with the official stuff. No one forgets that long Marvel livestream revealing the film's first cast members. We won't repeat the full list, just summarize. We've got the old X-Men, plus Shane Black's Gambit, the new Avengers or Thunderbolts, the Fantastic Four, Sam's Avengers, and that's not even all of them. Thor, who I almost consider a free agent since he's not really around anymore, Namor, M'Baku, and Shuri, Loki, and of course, Robert Downey Jr. And we've seen that some of them are already on set alongside RDJ. Clearly, this cast alone already has more people than Infinity War. Originally, Kang Dynasty was meant to unite just about 15 heroes. If this cast was announced, it's because they're the ones currently filming, which allowed us to avoid any unnecessary leaks. And we already know that scenes in the X-Men mansion have been filmed, that a conflict between Doom and the X-Men takes place in that mansion, and that they're filming it right now. A huge battle between RDJ, Sam's Avengers, some Thunderbolts, and the Fantastic Four against the X-Men, and some members of the Brotherhood of Mutants, including Magneto. And we also know that 3 motion capture characters are on set, which probably means 3 Hulks, but their actors are not currently present on set. So probably Hulk, She-Hulk, and either Scar or Red Hulk. And personally, I would really love it if it were Red Hulk. I dream of seeing him demolish Colossus.
Dad?
Well, just with this information, we already understand a lot about the movie. So there will be a confrontation between the heroes from 616 and those from the X-Men universe, the one where Monica Magneto landed. We also understand that the heroes from 616 well at the beginning are with Doom, or at least with the character played by RDG, but we shouldn't forget Thor, who, in theory, has nothing to do there for now. But also Loki, who, if he's on this list, will probably already be filming his scenes with Doom, and Namor, who for reasons still unclear, is going to get involved. I can easily see him joining the 616 Illuminati, where superhero leaders meet when the Fantastic Four arrive. Also, RDJ will film this movie for 4 months, while most of the other actors will only be there for 1 to 3 months. So yes, we're heading for a massive showdown between the X-Men and our MCU heroes. But we shouldn't forget that Kevin Feige confirmed this is only part of the cast, only those currently filming. So expect at least double that, maybe even more. And here we realize that some major names are missing, and actually the insider Jeff Snyder came to fill that gap. According to him, we should see a large part of the former Avengers. So Hulk, Captain Marvel, War Machine, Valkyrie, Okoye, Nick Fury, the new Guardians of the Galaxy and Star-Lord. The Young Avengers renamed champions. The members of the TVA like B-15 or Sylvie. And obviously Doctor Strange and Clea, plus a few X-Men who hadn't signed their contracts yet. The only character never mentioned here is Spider-Man. So, in addition to everything I told you before, we can imagine that a lot more is going to happen. The return of the former Avengers. The galactic stories that involve the Guardians. The Asgardians getting involved with Valkyrie, the introduction of the TVA, which will surely be the place of the final battle, the explanation of what Strange and Clea have been doing all this time, and the champions who should also have their moment. By the way, I don't know if you saw Slick, but there's a guy who managed to just walk into the Pinewood Studios, and he wandered around the set as if nothing was wrong. You see the guy casually grabbing snacks at the bar? Easy! And he's the one who brought back the footage of a Madripoor bar, which seems to be connected to the concept art where Wong, Star-Lord, and the champions gather. But we'll talk about that later. So, she needs to have her moment too. Because wait, it's still not over, guys. Recently, the comic book writer Chris Claremont, known for his X-Men runs, and often involved as a creative at Marvel Studios, he totally let it slip at a conference. He told us that Chris Evans would indeed be coming back, and that he would play several roles, including Captain America, an evil Captain America, and Captain Hydra. He also announced that RDJ would also play several characters, including Doctor Doom and Iron Man, which totally fits with the idea that Doom will trick everyone at first, by pretending to be a classic Avengers team from another world, only to literally betray everyone afterwards, because I fully believe that obvious Avengers from the multiverse will confront our current Avengers. Let me remind you that the Russo brothers described this movie as a challenging film, both for the characters and for the audience. Characters like Yelena, Bucky, Sam, and even Peter are going to be challenged by the idea of facing the traumas of the loved ones they've lost. Also, Grandpa Zazen said that Wolverine will be present, and he will kill an important character. Meanwhile, Wanda will make her return as a good Scarlet Witch. So, if we stick to all that, we already have more than 60 characters. Not far from the 70 that were announced at the very beginning, but what could a movie like that look like? Hold on, they're going to try to make a movie for us, the Doomsday Theory fiction. Well, obviously, as more information comes out, the theories evolve. It's extremely difficult today, with this movie, to have a fixed and unchanging idea. Marvel seems to change its mind every week. For example, last week I released a video saying Spider-Man is a strict reboot, and all signs supported that. This week we learned the movie will film worldwide, with little in New York. Sadie Sink plays Mayday, Tobey Maguire's daughter, from another universe. And so the movie is multiversal. Well, screw you too, huh? The complete opposite of my video. But even that could still change tomorrow. Anyway, let's focus for now. We're still in the first part of the video on what we know, and I want to start with the Fantastic Four. For me, there are two ways to introduce Doom. The first is to show his cruelty at the end of the Fantastic Four, by seeing him massacre alternate teams of the Fantastic Four, for example. The second is to show how capable he is of manipulating people and of coming up with a perfect plan, and I like that. So let's go with this second point. I believe the Fantastic Four post-credits scene happens years after the movie, which is why Franklin will be older in Doomsday. This will introduce a Reed who has mastered multiverse travel and could find a desolate world, where an Iron Man and Captain America ask him for help, a scene that will lead us directly to Avengers Doomsday. The movie would then start a few weeks earlier in the X-Men universe. Over there, we would see Doom directly attacking the team of mutants, possibly with his Doombots, but also with Sentinels. His goal is to capture an extremely powerful character, Jean Grey, and her Phoenix Force. But with the arrival of Magneto and the Brotherhood, Doom is defeated and forced to retreat. These X-Men are way too powerful. Back in Universe 616, we find out what our heroes are up to. Sam's Avengers are acting independently, while the new Avengers are nice and cozy in their tower at the taxpayer's expense. Early signs of incursions in space are starting to destabilize this universe. That's when the Fantastic Four's ship arrives. Their world is in danger, and the solution lies in Universe 616. On board, along with the Fantastic Four, are Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, variants who travel across the multiverse to try to save it. And according to them, the only way to prevent the death of the multiverse is in the X-Men universe, the one where Monica Rambeau is trapped. All the heroes then gather in Avengers Tower to decide what to do next, but only the leaders isolate themselves to really discuss it. Inside are Shuri, Reed, Namor, Yelena, Nick Fury, Bruce Banner, Captain Marvel, Wong, and our two guests, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. The debates are tense. Sam, Carol, and Yelena want to launch an attack to protect themselves and get Monica back. Wong and Namor would rather stay to defend Earth. Fury, for his part, doesn't trust these two new guests at all. In the end, the team split up. The Avengers and part of the new Avengers set out to attack the X-Men's universe with Tony Stark. Others remain to defend the 616 with Steve Rogers' variant. Fury, being cautious, comes up with a plan B. He gathers the champions in Madripoor, the young heroes brought together by his protege Kamala Khan, and they are joined by Wong, America Chavez, and Star-Lord, who calls for help from the Guardians of the Galaxy. In the X-Men universe, an epic battle breaks out. Monica Rambeau and Beast try to stop the massacre, and Stark then reveals his true identity. He is Dr. Doom. He was the one who attacked the X-Men in the first place in order to retrieve Jean Grey. He explains that he is the only one who can save the multiverse. Doctor Strange arrives and joins him. Other heroes follow, convinced by his speech, and together they return to Universe 616, the Eternal Time Stream. Because with Phoenix's powers, Doom can reach the TVA. The remaining X-Men heroes realize they've been deceived. On Earth, Steve Rogers is revealed as Captain Hydra and joins the other Dark Avengers. And together, they crush the last defenses and demolish the Thunderbolts. The Young Avengers try to intervene, joined by the manipulated X-Men and Avengers. But Doom manages to create a portal to the TVA using the power of Jean, Grey, or even Wanda. Then from the TVA, they head to the Void. There, he faces the Exiles, a team led by Deadpool and Captain Carter who are protecting Loki. But it's not enough. Doom still manages to open the breach to the Citadel thanks to his magic. Meanwhile, incursions are multiplying in Universe 616. Reed realizes that it's too late. He returns to his world and gathers some heroes and his family aboard a multiversal raft capable of surviving the end of the multiverse. Meanwhile, Doom steals Loki's powers. And as the last incursion hits Earth, he disappears in a white flash and creates Battleworld. Reed will survive thanks to his rafts, but he carries a huge sense of guilt. He's the one who brought the wolf into the fold and caused the end of the multiverse. Now he has to fix his mistake. Every time there's trouble, well, as you saw, this completely made-up scenario would allow absolutely everyone to be included. But as it stands, either it's rushed in 2.5 hours or it lasts 5 hours. And that's not even mentioning that Doom's origin story isn't included. Where he comes from, why he's doing this, and why he has that face are supposed to be crucial for understanding and empathizing with the character. Yet according to the Russo brothers, the events of Doomsday will be linked to Tony's death in Endgame. And that's where the whole problem lies. Doomsday in 2 parts. Well, here we are. This is it, the real theory. In my opinion, this movie absolutely cannot fit into just one part. Not with Phase 6 as it's currently set up. Because you absolutely have to take the other movies into account, especially Spider-Man, Brand New Day. We were supposed to have a street-level movie, but now insiders are talking about the multiverse again. Either way, it's not that important. Because everything suggests that Spider-Man will not be, or will barely be, in Avengers Doomsday. And honestly, for me, it's impossible to imagine Peter starting some kind of soft reboot in a personal story and then going straight into Secret Wars. If Doom has Stark's face, I can't imagine a world where there isn't an emotional reunion between Peter and him. Especially if this Doom is manipulative and tries to rally heroes from 616 to his cause. And if, like in the comics, Strange joins him, that would make 2 former mentors for Peter to follow. So no, I don't see Peter joining Secret Wars without going through the emotional stage first. Because in Secret Wars, except for those who are in the rafts, no one remembers the world from before. So either this confrontation has to happen, or Peter has to be in one of the multiversal rafts. There's clearly a missing piece for me. And that piece is a part 2 to Doomsday, placed between Spider-Man and Secret Wars. We could then imagine a part 1 focused on the rise of this shadowy figure who appears in every dying world, the understanding of the end of the multiverse, and the game of deception between Doom and his Dark Avengers. A movie where he manipulates everyone to make them kill each other, a sort of real setup film for what's to come. In part 2, he would invade Earth 616 with his Dark Avengers and his Doombots. Here, for once, the mission is simple. Rush as fast as possible to the TVA to reach Loki in a race against time. A movie where we finally take the time to discover his origin story, with Peter completely absent from the first part, but essential in the second. Because the first part takes place in the multiverse, and the second mainly on Earth in New York and at the TVA. And in reality, it's not just a matter of the script. Other clues make me suspect they're hiding another Avengers movie. First, the slot in November 2026. While the one in February 2026 has been removed from the Marvel schedule for months, the November one is still there, untitled. And despite the rumors of a Doctor Strange 3, a World War Hulk, a Shang-Chi, or even a Thor 5, no project has been confirmed for that date yet. And at this point in the schedule, having nothing at all is really very unusual. Second point, the completely insane salaries of RDJ and the Russo brothers. In general, the final pay figures come out once the actor receives his base salary, plus the bonuses tied to the success. For example, for Infinity War and Endgame, RDJ had a base salary of $20 million per film, to which $55 million in bonuses were added. That's $150 million in total for both films. But here, we're already talking about $100 million just to play the role of Doom. That's more than 2.5 times what he got for his previous films. So yes, Robert and Ben Kebbell, that's not a problem. But given Disney's current situation, it's pure madness. A fee that could go up to between 200 and 300 million depending on the success of these films, and it's the same for the Russos, 80 million for the two of them, which is huge for directors, especially when they're not producers like Cameron and Spielberg. So it's very likely that these amounts cover not 2 but 3 films. That would be a bit more reasonable. This famous film, set for release in November 2026, may not be announced yet because it could be filming alongside Doomsday, allowing them to stay very discreet, maybe even with an announcement at Comic-Con. That would give us a mini saga of 5 films between the Fantastic Four and Avengers Secret Wars. A real transition between the old MCU and the new one, with a final soft reboot in Secret Wars. And if you asked me, of course I would rather have a 2-part Secret Wars than a split Doomsday. But the problem is, all the reports are telling us that the next phase of the MCU is already ready. And that we need to finish this multiverse saga as quickly as possible to launch the new X-Men. All the reports say this except one, a completely crazy Phase 6. So as I was saying, this video was originally supposed to focus only on the story of Doomsday in 2 parts. But this morning, well, the morning I'm writing this, not the one you're watching, an insider came out of nowhere and dropped some crazy stuff on X. The account is called James McWhorter, 1,800 followers, and his bio says his old account was deleted for leaking too much stuff. Alright, I'm warning you right now, what comes next is extremely hype, maybe too much to be true. And to be honest, it actually confirms all my initial theories about the end of this saga with a half phase on Battleworld and a Secret Wars arc that really stays true to the original work. Be careful, just because it makes me happy doesn't mean it's true. Let's be careful and start with a quick overview. James says he has contacts working on VFX for upcoming Marvel movies, and nowadays that's likely one of the easiest sources to access. Marvel employs about 75% of the world's VFX artists. It's not a joke, and even I have information that comes from those sources. But one thing to say is that he was one of the first, as early as April 23rd, to announce that a fight would soon be filmed between the X-Men and the Avengers. A showdown between Magneto and Doom was planned, and since then, more reliable sources have confirmed it. But he also shared images from a fake Ironheart teaser that shows Mephisto. And we now know it's 100% fake, so it's weird. Still, to be fair, when accused of coming out of nowhere, he claims he's the insider who leaked everything about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Ultimately, it's your call. But let's return to the wild announcements he made earlier this week. He claims Marvel will make a big splash at the next Comic-Con. First, Doctor Strange 3 will indeed be the movie scheduled for November 6, 2026. And honestly, if that's true, it makes perfect sense. Strange is supposed to go fix an incursion. And this adventure could be the direct adaptation of Time Runs Out, one of the best runs by Jonathan Hickman, the one that's right before Secret Wars. We see Strange investigating the end of the multiverse, confronting the Swans, the Black Priests, and above all, teaming up with Doom because he ends up being convinced that it's the only way to save the multiverse. So this movie could totally explain the origins of Doom, why he acts this way, and where this multiversal threat really comes from. That would free up a lot of space in Doomsday. Well, the only small problem is that James announced the production name would be Doctor Strange in the Incursion of Insanity. And let's be honest, it sounds like a lie a 10-year-old would make up. Like, the sequel to Multiverse of Madness? Well, Incursion of Insanity. So, is it a lie or not? I don't know. Either way, he later corrected himself, saying that the title could finally become Time Runs Out, which in this case would make a lot more sense. A movie that, as the rumors said at the time, could be directed by Sam Raimi. By the way, even though those rumors had slowed down in recent months with people thinking Marvel wanted to move on, well, it turns out that's not the case after all. And by the way, that would explain why Benedict Cumberbatch got completely mixed up about his presence in Doomsday. One day he said no, he wasn't in it, and the next day he said yes, actually, he was wrong. And in my opinion, even he can't keep track of it. Then, James announces that the movies after Secret Wars won't be post-reboot movies, but actually Battleworld movies. And now, hold on tight. As I previously theorized, a World War Hulk movie is in development. We saw it in the leaks, a Green Lantern is indeed in the works, and it will help move the plot forward against Doom in the Battleworld. And at the same time, a Thor 5 is also in the works, with the temporary title Thor Hammerfall. In the Secret Wars comics, Doom creates a new universe, a patchwork of destroyed worlds where variants coexist, and he makes the Thors the police of this world. And so this movie could introduce our Thor as part of the Thor Corps and let us discover the different regions of Battleworld. And the latest news announcing this movie specified that Chris Hemsworth did everything he could to have the film directed by George Miller, so why not with a bit of a post-apocalyptic vibe? James finishes by announcing that in 2028 we'd get the films Scarlet Witch, Kingdom of the Damned, Black Panther 3, and finally Secret Wars Part 2, which might potentially have another name. And if after all that they launch the soft reboot with the X-Men, well, we can say that it would be the biggest phase in the history of the MCU. 10 movies in 4 years, all potentially epic. But when you look at Phase 3 where we had 11 movies in 4 years, well, that makes it entirely possible. And I almost forgot, James also announces that the Champion series is going to be announced very soon, and honestly, I'm on board with that. A stranger making big promises is like someone with candy inviting me into his van. It's tempting since I love jelly beans, but my mom taught me to be careful. There you go, we're reaching the end of this gigantic, completely crazy video, and I really encourage you to tell me in the comments what you think about it. For you, do you believe more in my first theory, or more in this insider who's making huge promises, or maybe neither one nor the other, and honestly, that's okay. If you haven't seen my latest video on Spider-Man's soft reboot, it's right here. I'll see you next Sunday for a new video at 5 p.m. and a new episode of The Spoiler Room at 9 p.m. In the meantime, don't forget to stay curious. That's the secret to being happy. Ciao.